guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, what I wanted to talk about is being alone and feeling alone when you have cerebral palsy. And what this video is not meant to be is something negative. It's just more something I wanted to get out of my head, but also sort of make aware that it is a thing. And as always with my videos, it's to do with how my cerebral palsy affects me personally, and that will actually come up in today's video as a reason. So I'm not saying this is a blanket cover everything for cerebral palsy, and it also does affect others with other disabilities as well. But what I wanted to talk about is how having a disability, how having cerebral palsy can make you feel alone. Well, personally, I think there's a difference between alone and lonely. Like, you can feel alone in terms of, you can feel lonely when you're with other people, but you can feel alone just by yourself, by the thoughts in your own head. And the reason I think this is a thing for me is because everyone with cerebral palsy is affected differently depending on the damage in the brain. So no person with cerebral palsy is alike to another person. So though other people with cerebral palsy can understand the effects of things like depression, post-impairment syndrome, tiredness, pain that other people with cerebral palsy go through, they don't know how it affects you personally, about how it has the effect on your body and your mind as well. And I guess that's a blanket term for everything really, because no one else can truly experience someone else's pain or suffering. It's a personal thing to a person, so there's no comparison between anything else or that. But I guess what I want to start thinking about is that when you have cerebral palsy, even growing up, you realise how different you are from other people, like other people with disabilities, other people with without disabilities as well. Like, you try and fit in, and up to a certain age, so I'd say around primary school, there's a thing where people don't really mind, don't really care. They just think, oh, she walks funny, but she's just like you and me. And then you get to the higher age groups, and then you hear people's opinions of you, of people with disabilities, even if they're not directly at you, or what people think in general. Like, if people think just because you've got physical disability, it also affects you mentally, so they can talk about you in front of you if you even if you're there and for some reason you won't understand it. I think feeling alone with cerebral palsy is one of the main things with my depression, because it does, even though it's a chronic condition, the actual damage to the brain doesn't get worse or better, it's stagnant. But what you've got to realise is that even though it's stagnant, the effect it has on your body, because you're using your muscles differently, you're always more tired, you're always using more energy, it does affect you more as you get older, I find. So what I find is that even if people try and include you in things, like, or even if they try and do it subtly or go out their way, that does make you feel alone, because people don't have to do that for other people. They don't have to think of ways to include you specially, or even do it subtly, so they don't have to think about, oh, what will happen if I do or don't include them. And I think growing up with a disability and having a disability, you're very good at reading and feeling other people's feelings about you and around you, because you realise you're not normal and you are an inconvenience to people sometimes. Like, if you go out with a group of friends, some of them are going to have to slow down and walk with you. You can't just go off, gallivanting around, or it may stop you going from trips. And like for me, I always, like, if I go out with a group of friends and they want to do something I know I can't do, I will say, I don't mind, I'll stay down here and you do it. And though most of the time in the front of my head I don't mind, I do mind in the fact that I have to do that because I don't want people to miss out on things because of me. But it does make me feel more alone because I have to also think about putting my feelings, but also how my feelings would affect other people if I stop them from doing something, because that's a big thing for me. Like, people always put me in a box and says, oh, you're within this box, you're either not clever, because you're disabled you wouldn't be in this level, you wouldn't be this. And I do tend to go out of my way to put effort in to show people that I'm not going to fit in your box, but it is more tiring and more effort. Like, naturally I always put 100% effort in, not more. I can do the work of like 2 or 3 people in the same amount of time. It takes one person to do certain things, but if it's not physical, but I can do that mentally, and I can do like stuff at work that quickly. But it's the fact that it's kind of a thing for me to prove, or it might be out of spite, I guess, to say, yeah, I'm not going to be put in your box. I'm going to prove every misconception you've had of me from the minute you first met me. And in a way that I guess that kind of makes people feel bad or guilty, I guess. But I guess they don't need to, because it's society's sort of fragment on their mind. It's what society has built up, an image of those with disabled people. But being alone, especially when you're young, is generally one of the things that gets me, because you do realise you're different. You do realise that people have to go out of their way sometimes to be able to include you, or it's more of an inconvenience for them. But you also realise that you also have to do that to yourself, so that you don't feel like other people are not going to then invite you next time because you were too much trouble. So you go out of your way to, even if it's something you really wanted to do, but know that you've got to, it will be a problem, or it will be something that you've got to consider other people's feelings, because having a disability it's not that easy to make friends, especially if you're introverted like me. And when you have a disability, I'm very good at picking up how people feel about me when they meet me. I'm very good at seeing how comfortable people are around me. And when I feel that, I tend to try either go one direction or the other. I will try and either help them feel a bit more comfortable with me if I think they're worth doing so, or I will not do anything at all, and I will wait for their head to catch up with them to realise that I'm not something scary. I'm not something that's gonna, like, you're not gonna catch it if you talk to me. And I guess, yeah, it's that sort of thought process, that sort of, are you an inconvenience? Are they just doing it because you're disabled? Are they gonna hate you because they had to do this? Are they going to invite you again because they had to do this time? I guess that is the part of cerebral palsy and disability that makes you feel alone as a person, because personally I don't think able people generally do think that much about how much of an inconvenience they are going to be on other people, or how much effort, or the fact that you can get tired mid-trip and have to sit down for the rest of it, how much that could ruin someone else's day, and you feel bad because they purposely invited you along and they didn't have to do that. So that's the part that could make you feel alone. What can also make you feel alone is the fact that the tiredness, the pain, and the sort of post-impairment syndrome just basically means that at the end of a day, or after you've done something, all you're going to do is literally lie down, like either on the floor, on a bed, on a sofa, depending on how comfortable you can get. Is the fact that with just lying down, sometimes you're too tired or too in too much pain to actually sleep. And that means you think, and you think of all the things that happened on that day. You think of all the things that, what did other people think of you? Did they really do that? Or that sort of thing. And I think that's what can make you feel alone, because you're very much isolated in your body and you don't have a choice over that, but you do have a choice of how your actions can affect you and how other people's actions can affect you. And I guess that's what makes you feel alone, because nobody really experiences how your body feels and how tired you are. And sometimes it can be never ending, like you can rest for 3 days after a day out and still feel absolutely exhausted. And that's the thing that makes you feel alone, because you're not functioning as an adult when you do that. I guess being alone with cerebral palsy is also a worry, because you worry that nobody's gonna, eventually people are just gonna get tired or bored, or just you'll be too much of an inconvenience to people to be invited again. So eventually you'll not be invited, or you'll just be gradually left out, and then you will be alone, stuck, isolated at home. So that is actually physical loneliness, because how you do things may affect other people. It may make them slower, it may make them miss out on things, and that's a worry. And then I know I do this because I worry about this. I then make myself alone and isolate myself further, because I think of all these things and go, oh well, I'm not going to do that trip then, because this will happen, or this will happen, or this will happen. And generally that's a cycle. So you can feel it from other people, then you feel it on yourself, and then you do it to yourself, and that's what makes you feel alone. Especially being younger with a disability, like you feel like you're judged by the elderly generation, with the fact that when you do things they think, oh, you're just young, you're just taking the mick. Or you also feel judged by, I guess, parents of other children with disabilities. So people can look and agree at you and think, oh, that person's just doing this because it's this. And I guess that's a reflection of my own sort of paranoia, I guess, in my head, that you can give as much or as little to a person with a disability or with cerebral palsy when they're younger, and you can make them believe so many things, but eventually that bubble is going to break, because society is not built for those with disabilities, and the world around you and the accessibility of it can make you feel even more alone. And the fact is, when that bubble breaks, you are going to have to build yourself back up. You can't do it for other people. So that's why being alone with cerebral palsy is one of those things. Like, nobody can truly understand how tired you are until you fall asleep sat upright with your neck like this because you couldn't stay awake any longer, or the fact that you haven't slept in a few days because your body is too tired to let you fall asleep, or the fact that you know that you won't be able to get somewhere easily or get around that easily, and you don't want to inconvenience people around you, so you rule yourself out of that trip, or you worry about it while you're on there that you're going to ruin it for the people there and they're not going to invite you. Or the fact is that if you arrange something, people originally invite you and then they cancel on you, and then you find out that they went anyway, is another thing, because it just makes you realise about how different you are. And people have done that to me before. I've gotten used to it by now, so it's okay. So I tend to just put myself around the people that I know are okay with hanging out with me, but I'm not gonna think I'm too much of an inconvenience, I'm too much to deal with at that time. So I guess this video is more about how cerebral palsy makes me feel alone, and I guess it can affect everyone differently. So what are your opinions on how does your disability, or how does you having cerebral palsy, does it make you feel alone or isolated? How does that make you feel? What are your experiences? Thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next video.